He's gonna get. He's gonna fight me. He's a big Viking. He thinks he's awesome.
Hello everyone, this is me, the Undead Viking. For those of you who watched my channel for a long time, you know that I did a review of a game called Dominant Species a long time ago, it feels like. Designed by one of the, I think, the best board game designers ever, Chad Jensen. It still remains one of my all-time favorite games, and I've just really loved the whole idea of evolution and playing a really intense, like, combative, highly interactive Euro with different humans, like basically portraying different species of animal and like basically warring over a world. So when I saw this game, it just kind of blipped onto my radar, Pangea. I delved into the game a bit and read about it. I was really excited. Just because of the fact that here was a game that was going to be, each player was going to take on the role of a different species during the area of Pangea, and it was about the Extinction event that is relatively, in comparison to the one that we know about the dinosaurs and the giant meteor and whatever. The Precambrian extinction event, where like it was like 90% of the animals, the species that were on the planet died out. It almost wiped out life on the planet, and it is a fascinating thing that is well researched and like just a lot of cool stuff. And so because that was, I mean, and ostensibly there is a theme that basically like it's, you are all scientists that are like running through a simulation of it and trying to understand what causes an extinction level event and how the humans or how the animals on the planet would be able to prevent themselves from being killed off, and that's like the idea behind it. You know, but you know, for me, I don't really, you know, that simulation idea didn't really click with my brain really well. I just like the idea of the fact that I'm one of these four species that is like trying to like basically carve out my little spot, my little niche in the or niche or whatever. I'm sure it's somebody will correct me in the world, and like, and then, you know, survive this oncoming event that is going to kill off most of the animals that are on the planet. So let me show you how the game is played. This is a game that, like, when you first see it, you're gonna be like, oh geez, how do I play this? And then once you play a turn, you're like, oh, I know how to play this, because it's pretty straightforward, and it is not a difficult game to learn. But man, oh man, because of the fact that you were, you know, the game, yes, at the end, the doom comes and it kills off your species, and you're going to end up, the last man standing is likely going to win the game. But it is the other players fighting over those scraps, those spots on the planet that you're going to be fighting against is who you're going to be trying to, you know, grab victory out of their hands, grab it away from them, while they're trying to do exactly the same. And I love games like that. So here we go. This is Pangea, how to play, and we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is Pangea. I'm going to be describing a little bit what you're looking at before we go ahead and dive into the actions that you can take on your turn. Just so you know, this is a prototype that I was sent, but you know, the artwork and everything you're seeing here is going to look a lot like what you're going to be seeing in the published version. Just keep in mind that the component quality and things like that will be improved upon. Alright, so it is Pangea. It is an area control game. I've set up a 4-player game. Because of the fact that, like, you don't actually shorten the playing field when you have less players, you will have like dummy NPC players that you will go through a process for the neutral animals to go through. I'm not really going to dive into that as far as the gameplay version of that. I'll touch on the addition of those in my final thoughts. I mean, the game plays excellently with however many you have. But just keep in mind that like you aren't going to have like a smaller playing field if you say you have a 2-player game. You will just have a couple of neutral species that you'll have to contend with as well. In this game, I have set it up with 4 players. At the very beginning of the game, you're going to pick a spot where you're going to be placing your animals. That's what those tokens are. I've set up the amphibians over here, but there are other animal races, the synapsids, and so on and so forth. So there are several others, and just to show you like the player boards. The player boards themselves, they give you like they have certain action points. Down here it tells you the different number of action points it costs to do all the actions in the game. You'll notice that like these are highlighted for you, but they actually list off the action points for the other players as well. That could be helpful if you want to try to maybe figure out what the other players are going to do and going to like try to accomplish on their turns. It also has each animal has like a special ability, and just kind of gives you a little bit of background. And these are really cool, and I do like these a great deal. I always when games take the extra effort to make sure that the player boards not only like kind of go over what you do in a turn and have like a good refresher course, if you will, so like you don't have to be constantly like going back to the rules or what have you. Having a good subset of the rules in front of you is always welcome. Each player has a certain number of evolution cards that they'll use. I'll talk about those in a little bit when we talk about how your turn works. You'll have these action cubes that you will place on these spots on your board to activate them. You notice there's only 2 spots, meaning that on your turn you only can do a given action twice. So just keep that in mind. These are the markers that will represent the animals you're putting out, and each person has one special animal marker, which is like a special evolution, be like kind of your super animal that you can put out there, and that's always a good idea to get your super animal out. At the beginning of the game, you will have in this first age, you're going to have 4 objective markers. These are ways you're going to score dominance points. This is like an area control game, but it is also a like whoever has the most points at the end of the game will be the winner. And some of them are going to be like this one. So if you have 3 animals in a region, the first player to do it gets 3 points, and so forth, as you can see down the track there. But however, some of them will just say, like on there right there, where it says perform 4 different actions in one stage, and then the first player to do that gets 2 points. So like, but only the first player will get that. And these little markers there, you'll just drop those in there to show that you've accomplished those. And if you're the one just accomplished the one that only one person has, the other players will know that they can't do that. I mentioned ages. There are 3 ages. You'll notice there's like this little doom thing. And I do want to take a moment here to show you what this doom marker is. It actually is a planet that has a meteor hitting it on the end. I thought that was actually kind of cool that was the doom tracker, if you will. So like as this goes through, you'll notice there's a spot here and a spot here. Those will change the ages. There are these 2 age change cards that when the age changes, like they'll tell you certain things to do on these. Like in this case, the first age change, each player in initiative order can migrate one of their animals to an available ecological niche higher by 1. Migrate's an action. That'll make more sense when I talk about actions in a little bit, but that's one of those. There are lots of these, so you never know exactly what those are going to be. It's kind of one of those random things, and I enjoy those in games like that. There is a large stack of these adaptation cards. Adaptation cards can be used in lots of different ways. They obviously are going to be able to adapt your race, like these amphibians or the synapsids or what have you. They're allowed to adapt those, but also they can be used for action points, or they are used to activate your evolution cards as well. I do like multi-use cards. I've always enjoyed that in games. Like, oh, what do I want to use this card for? But I'll talk about that more once we get into the actual actions. These different regions, you can probably see here, they have this little like food number here, and then they have this like 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. That is the amount of food that location provides depending upon what age. So like if this says 1, 2, 3, that means during the first age it provides 1, and then 2, and then 3 as you go up this ladder. If there is ever a situation where there are too many animals in a location, then they have food. That particular spot will be in what's considered to be hungered. And when something is hungered, for each animal that's in that location, you will either have to lose a point, because this is the dominance track, the dominance points here. You'll either have to lose a point or remove an animal. So, like, depending upon what you want to do, if you want more animals out there, so, you know, you have to decide on that. And that is actually a very powerful tool, because you can have situations where people, especially like the tougher animals, like the synapsids, which are like, you know, the big brutes, like they might, you know, have a dominant hold on something, but you could, as an amphibian or as an invertebrate or something like that, you could kind of stockpile in there and chew up the food in that location, and then they would like basically be like having a bunch of stuff. They're losing points, and or perhaps they'd have to give up their location and have to lose their critter in there. So it's kind of a neat thing that goes on. And that's something I'm going to talk about too in my final thoughts. But what you would think, because like each, and I'm just going to show you like the synapsids here, like each one of these types, like they have this thing, this expansion like a number here, and so that's a 4. And so the expansiveness is what determines when there's a contest between. I'll describe contest here in just a second, but whoever has the highest expansiveness is the one that's going to win a contest. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, well then the synapsids are just going to like go crazy. But the how do I put this? The different races or the different creatures have they are different, you know, as far as like all their powers and abilities. And you would think that, but they're asymmetrical, but they also are very, very well balanced. And it's something that I really enjoyed. And like playing the game as the invertebrates is remarkably different than playing as the synapsids or the amphibians or what have you. So it's something that obviously the designers of the game did a lot of work and a lot of effort to make sure that those things worked. One last thing over here, this particular track here, this is kind of an interesting thing. This is, as the game progresses, you are allowed to, and this is an action, you'll be moving up this track one by one. And as you move up this track one, there's going to be some places like this one where like you'll, if you're the first person to get there, you'll get the points that are associated with those spots. But also, you'll be able to pick up these tiles, and you'll be able to look at them. The reason for this is that at some point when the game reaches its end, so each turn you're going to go through this, and then you're going to hit the doom over here, you're going to reveal these 3 tiles. And what those 3 tiles are going to be is there's going to be one of these sector tiles, one of these zone tiles, and one of these cataclysm tiles. And there's 3 different types of cataclysms, and the sector and the zone will cause an intersect, and the doom will hit somewhere here in the middle, and then there will be an explosion. I'll show you how the doom works in just a second, but basically it will cause a lot of devastation, and you're going, whoever has like the most animals still living are going to get a bunch of points at the end of the game, and probably are, you know, will be enough to maybe propel them into a victory. So when you turn one of these over, you can like look, and you can see like this one says like Sector A, and so that means that Sector A is this one right here, and what that tells the players is that, if you get to see this, is that the cataclysm isn't going to happen anywhere in Sector A, because it's kind of like the deduction thing going on. And so then as you reveal these, so like let's just turn this over, that's Sector B and that's Sector D. So now you know somewhere in this Sector C right here, one of these places, that the doom is going to happen in that particular location. So now you're going to like begin plotting where you want your animals to be to try to prevent them from dying. All right. One last thing before I actually just go into the actual actions, and I've kind of touched on them a little bit here, so I've kind of jumped around a bit. But each one of these locations, they have these three levels of ecological niches. They have a 0, a 1, and a 2. And at the beginning, you get to place one of your animals out in a 0. Any number of animals can be in a 0. I mean, obviously, like if there's not enough food to feed them, that's going to cause hunger. But you could be in this location, and normally, unless there is like a special ability or like a special like turn of an age or something like that, there will be no contest between these animals. But the moment you have two animals in ecological niche that are, like they are going to contest in that spot. And that's where that expansiveness comes in. So the one with the most expansive, in this case, this is like an invertebrate versus snapsid. I mean, that's the most powerful of the snapsid versus the weakest. That's going to, push that one back down. Now, the reason why there's this 0, the 1, and the 2, and I don't remember exactly where these were, but that doesn't matter. The reason why there's 0, 1, and 2, the higher up on this chain that you go, the better the chance you're going to do to survive the end. And so, like, if you can get up into the 2, you are going to, as long as you're not like at ground 0, and once again, I'll show you how the Doom thing works here in a little bit, but as long as you're not at ground 0, you have a really good chance of not dying from the extinction event if you are in the level 2. And so that's kind of your goal. You want to get your critters into those 2s, to try to keep them alive and try to get them. Now there is one cataclysm where the 1s are safe too, but 2 out of the 3 cataclysms, like you have to be in the 2s, to avoid it. Now that isn't all spaces; it doesn't affect the entire map. But if you're close to ground 0, you want to be up as far as possible. All right, so. All of that aside now, hopefully you're still with me. Let me just kind of explain to you what happens on a turn. So you will have like the turn, this is the turn markers, so the snaps that go and so forth like that. After the first turn, this is set up the way it always will be set up, just because of the way the game works. After this is done, whoever is the highest on the point total will go last, and the second highest, and so forth. So the person who is in last place on the points gets to go first the next round. Just kind of a catch-up mechanism. Always a good idea to have that in the game. You never want to like the one person who's way down. You want to like keep beating them down, if you will. So you then so you'll determine that at the end of the round. But regardless, so each person is going to take their turn. They take their entire turn. They use up all of their action points until they pass, and when they pass, they'll just flip their marker over like so to the pass side on their marker, and that signifies their turn is done. You don't have to use up all your action points if you don't want to, but most of the time you're going to do that. On your turn, as I said, you will look at the different actions you want to take, and you're just going to place an action marker on there. So like in this case, I want to do an adapt action. That would cost me 3 points. So we 1, 2, 3, and I would take the adapt action from doing that. You'll notice there's a 6 and a 7 and an 8 for the action points. As you go through the ages, you start off at 6 in the first age here, the Caesura, and then when you get to the Guadalupe, you're going to have 7, and then when you finally get to the end, which is Loping, you'll have 8. So as the game progresses, you'll get more and more action points. Now. You are allowed to use like the adapt cards that you get as action points as well, and you do get 2 of these cards. Like you just when your turn, you get to collect 2 of these, and you get to now these. Using them for action points is always a good idea because you're always getting more, and you're gonna be forced to discard them anyway when you get too many. So it's always a good idea if you can use these for extra action points. If you're not going to use them, if you're not planning on using the adaptations that they give you, then you definitely should be using them for action points. Otherwise, you're just going to lose them anyway. So here, I'm just going to show you one of these. So here's this is an adapt card. So on the back of the cards, and all of them are going to say this, it just says when this card is active, you can discard it in the adapt action to pay for an evolution card, or you can use the adaptation card ability by turning it over, or you can discard it to get an action point. And so on this side we have This is fast occupation. Using a populate action, you can place an animal in ecological niche 1, which is actually a pretty good power because normally you have to put it in a 0, but you can just immediately get into that. But, you know, maybe just whatever, that isn't something you'd want. Now, all of these cards, you're going to put these cards face down like here. When they're down here, that means they're inactive. And to get them into the active state, you're gonna like you'll be placing like evolution cards you'll place up here, and adaptation cards you'll place over here. You know, and when they become active. Now, in some cases, you'll have a adaptation card that's active, that's up there like that, and that means that it can be spent, and that's you get it up there by actually using the adapt action to have it up there, and then you can use those cards as a resource to spend them to get your evolution cards. But I've already dove into the action, so I might as well just, you know, kind of delineate the adapt action. So this is the adapt action, is the first of the 4 actions. You have adapt, populate, migrate, and survive is the 4 different actions. So to adapt, you just choose one of your adaptation cards. This is when you activate an adaptation card. You choose one of the adaptation cards from your inactive card zone, and then you're going to be placing it face down to the right of the board. Now the card's active, and it can be used for one of these 3 abilities that's on the side of it. Now, as I said, you can use those for evolution cards. So, and that's another adapt action. But like, so you'll see like some of these evolution cards will have, and you might be able to see that it has a 0 on the bottom. That means it costs no adaptation cards to use. However, like this one right there, it says it costs 1 if I wanted to. So like in this ability here is Diplocaulus, and the animal can occupy an ecological niche already taken by another animal, and there is no contest between the two. This is a pretty powerful ability of the amphibian. Like basically allows it to coexist with other animals. So that's also an adapt action. So if I did that, I'd have to discard this card to activate that evolution. So, and evolution cards are really, really important, especially because they are one of those things where you are trying to make sure that you are like becoming a better animal, and having these abilities will enable you to have a better chance of survival. Now, as I mentioned, there is like the super animal, like so this and the super animal evolution will actually have up on there like the super animal, and so for this one is the Ariops. Whenever a hunger marker is placed in the region during the survival phase, this animal migrates to the ecological niche 2 and does not suffer any hunger penalties. Other players' animals need to migrate to the ecological niche 0. And so that's like a super powerful, like, you know, you can see where that would be helpful when it gets into those spots. Like, oh, I'm not hungry, I'm going to go to level 2. I kick everybody back down to 0, and you know I'm you know a powerful amphibian. And in that case, like, and these would be like having that particular, the red one. Each different species gets a super animal and has it, but you'll place that out there to show that that exists. Okay, so that is the adapt action. Now the populate is really, really simple when you do, and once again, I just want to specify, you notice there's 2 boxes. You can do actions twice, but but you can only do them twice. And you can do these in any order. You don't have to start at the top and move your way down. You can do this however you will. Populate, you get to place one of your animal workers anywhere you want, like in level 0 in the spot. So you populate. I want to place you know one of my animals there. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's how you get your animals out onto the board. It should be mentioned that if you ever satisfy any of these objectives on your turn, that is, you just do it automatically. You just say, okay, hey, I did 4 different kinds. I did like the 4 different actions one. You know, I performed 4 different actions on my turn. I'm going to go ahead and place that down there because I've successfully done that. That's, you know, definitely something you can do to increase your points. The migrate action, you get to choose any of your animal markers in any region and then migrate the chosen animal. Now, when you migrate, this is how you take and migrate, and you can migrate it up into a higher niche. And you do that in that particular area. Now you can also migrate to move it to another spot, and when you move it, like, you know, east and west, if you will, or left and right, you'll move it, and you can, if you want, move it down, but you can't move it up. So keep that in mind. You can also migrate up and down, but when you migrate up and down, you have to move down one. So if you're in a 0, you can't upgrade, you can't migrate up and down. You'd have to be like, if I was in 2, I could migrate up here if I wanted, but I'd have to move down to the 1. And if I was in a 1, I'd have to move down to 0. And that's how the migrate action works. Now the final thing, and this kind of segues or ducktails pretty nicely into the Doom, is the survive. Now the survive action, what that does, it allows you to move up this track. And as you move up the track, then you're able to discover those things. And one of the things is that like, you're allowed to go back and look at the cards if you wish. You don't have to, oh, I forgot, But the nice thing is that if all the players move up, you can just flip it over because you all know it at that point, right? And because you've all moved up to that location. But so one of the thing is that after you've gotten all the way to the top, you'll have a good idea. You'll know what those 3 are because you'll know which cataclysm is left. You'll know which sector and whatever. And that happens when you reach here. So just to show you how Doom works, you'll take these 3, and you'll see that, okay, so the zone is going to be the interior zone. So that means it's going to be this guy right there. We already know, because we saw it earlier, that it's going to be sector C. So it's going to be sector C and in the interior. So this is where the Doom is happening. And here we have, and it is the massive planetoid, meaning that is the destruction. So you go ahead and you place that right there to show that is where like the extinction event is going to originate. So here you have like the Doom reference card, and this will kind of tell you. So the first thing that happens at the end of the game is that everything dies where that spot landed, and also in the 4 orthogonally close in those. And then you'll notice also, like the diagonal ones, in the ones that are diagonal, unless you're in the ecological niche of 2, you will die. So I don't really have this set up with a bunch of different animals here, but so like if you had things like here, let's move that one to there, and let's move this one to there. So just imagine this is how this happened. It probably wouldn't, but just for example. So if there's anything here, it's dead, gone, destroyed. So but it's not there. Now everything here gets destroyed, so you'd remove those from the playing board as well. And then you would look at the diagonals here, and here. Anything not in the level 2 would be destroyed as well. And even though this one was in the 1, it wouldn't matter because it wasn't in the 2. And so you'd remove that. And then the final thing you do is that you look at massive planetoid on the back here, and it says your extreme heat, all animals in the subpolar zones and in the ecological niche 2, all animals in the subpolar zones and in the ecological niche 2 in temperate zones survive. So basically, if you look at the temperate zones, well, the subpolars are here, obviously. So it doesn't matter where you were in there. If you were there, you'd be fine and you'd be okay. And then the temperate zones, if you were in level 2, you'd survive in that as well. And just so you can kind of see in to help out there, you can see like the eruption of the supervolcano, global cooling, all animals in the interior zone, and then the ecological niche 2 in the temperate zone survive. So the subpolars would die in that case because of the fact that there was supercooling. And then you can see there in the last one, the gamma rays, annihilation of the subcontinent, all animals in the subcontinent where the epicenter is, and all other animals in the ecological niches 0 die. That's the one where if you're 1 or 2, you would live. So I mean, that's the game, and that's like a really good overview of the rules and how the game is played. As soon as I heard about this game, I was excited to play it. I thought man, I'm jazzed to play anything that actually references like what the Precambrian die out. Just like a very amazing thing that happened in our past that I truthfully did not know about. I didn't until I actually saw like a YouTube video about it about a year ago. And I was fascinated by it. I read some books about it. And when I knew there was going to be a game that was about that, I knew I was going to really, really enjoy it. And they've taken a very, very, like now to me anyway, famous world event and made a very, very compelling game about it. And, it has the right blend of like really good competition between the players and also like really good planning and foresight and combine some really, really fun mechanisms to make a really, really unique gaming experience. But let me talk about that and more in my final thoughts. All right, so there you go. That is the Pangea. All right, so I did mention the fact that when you play with less than 4 players, there is some stuff going on. I just want to briefly show. So, like each race, each species that isn't being used will have these boards, and the boards themselves will have like you'll use a die that will show you like, and you'll run through each neutral animal that you have, and you will randomize what they do on each turn. Now this can be actually a lot for me. This was actually really fun because of the fact that like I always would be like, oh, like I'd always want to like roll the dice to like kind of maybe mess with, hopefully roll a good number, right? And hopefully have these neutral animals really mess with my neighbors and give them something to do battle with. And of course then cursing my luck if I got the bad thing. People might not really like that. I mean, as far as like the randomness of it, but I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, you're dealing with, when you're playing with other players, yes, there is some determinism, and as far as like certain players will have certain proclivities when they take their actions and what they do, but I think this does an excellent job of using up the resources, using up the spaces to provide a little bit of an extra barrier for the players to mess with and have to deal with. And the fact that like you don't have to shorten the map, then you don't have to make the map smaller just so 2 players will fight with each other more. Like, yes, you might end up, it might end up being a less bloodthirsty game, obviously, because of the fact that you could kind of avoid each other in a 2-player game. You could just go after the neutral animals. I don't do that, of course. I figure if I'm actually taking you down and I'm gaining by taking you down, that's a much better way to victory. And so that's usually the mentality I take in the games like this. But if you wanted to play like a kinder, gentler version of Pangea, I could definitely see you playing a 2-player game for that. And also, I should just because sometimes you have to randomize locations. You'll get these region cards, and on like in just the deck that like when you draw them, it'll tell you like what region to do certain actions and things like that, just so you can randomize the location. Anyway, I wanted to talk about that, and like I said, it works perfectly, and I think it is a grand thing. And I did play a 2-player game with my daughter, but she's really bloodthirsty too, so we went after each other pretty hardcore. But it worked great, and we had a lot of fun with it. So, I've already touched on a lot of things I really liked. I knew I was going into it, I was going to really enjoy it. I saw, like I said, a YouTube video, I think it was PBS, I think it was Aeons or something like that, or whatever that YouTube channel is, where I first learned about the Cambrian Extinction event. And like I said, I read about this, I was like, this is going to be awesome, I really want to play this. And it was exactly what I thought it would be. It was a game of area control, it was a game of high interactivity between the players, it was a game of, like, sometimes, like, brutal end game scenarios that like really put you to the test. I mean, yes, you could theoretically get enough points and lose most of your animals, because like for every animal that lives through the horribleness or whatever, the extinction event, you're getting points at the end of the game. But theoretically you could score less points at the end there, and still win if you did really well in the game. I mean, I think you'd be tough. I think it'd be a tough road to hoe. I mean, that would be like something, maybe a goal to have. But obviously, having a bunch of animals still alive at the very end of the game is going to give you a big giant boost, and that's what you should be shooting for. I really liked the track that allowed you the survive track, where you're basically learning more and more and more. It's kind of like when obviously when you think of deduction games, it's kind of like when you're playing Clue and you just the other players might have a better shot, so you just have to take a guess, you have to take a gamble, and you can go for it. So you might not be all the way up on the track, and you might just have to take a gamble, and I think it'll be around here. And that is something where it's like, if you're spending a lot of time and a lot of your actions on that track, you might end up being in a situation where you haven't done enough of the population and the migration that it doesn't matter. Yeah, sure, you know where everything is, and you know where it's an asteroid, or you know it's a super volcano, and you know where it's going to blow up, but you haven't bothered getting anything out there, and it's too late now. You don't have enough actions or time to actually go through with all of that. So I think that's like a very, very good weighted thing that goes on in that situation, and I have a lot of fun with that. Ultimately, it's one of those things too where you can actually watch other players that keep going up the track, and you can start looking at what they're doing, and you can react to that. Now, of course, there's the double think there, where if nobody else is doing it and they're watching to see what kind of actions I'm taking, one, I can try to if I get ahead, I go last, right? So I can try to push my points up so I can go last, and so they can't react to me, or before. I'll have a turn buffer there, if that makes sense. If I went last in turn 4 or something, because I know that sector C or whatever is where it's going to be, then everybody else goes, and then I'm oh, I'm going to move everything out of this spot, right? And they're oh my gosh, he's getting out of there. That must be the reason why. But I think that you think that you think that I think that, and maybe try to do a bluff, wait until the last few turns, and then do your big change, that kind of thing. And so there's definitely, like I said, some metagame that going on, the game beyond the game, as I've said in other videos, that I enjoy that aspect. And that's also feeds into the whole thing where it's just players against each other. And I once again, there's nothing wrong with games that where everybody kind of just does their own thing, and everybody kind of sees at the end how well they did in comparison to each other. I can play those games and I can have a lot of fun with them. However, I am a big fan of having the other players be my barrier to victory. And this is definitely one of those games where I have to outplay the other people at the table if I am going to claim victory at the very end. And so I enjoyed that a lot. So, this is a game that just hit on all cylinders for me. It is fantastic. It is from Red Imp, and they make fantastic looking games. They make games with awesome components, and I've just really, ever since the Ice Palace game, I can't think of the name right now. That was the very first game I ever picked up from them. It was a fantastic game, and ever since then, they've just kept hitting home runs every single time with each one of the releases, and this is no different. So there you go. If you have any questions about Pangea, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I encourage you all to be the best version of you that you possibly can be. Try not to let a day go by without you making sure you smile at a stranger, and tell a joke to your partner, and maybe take a dog for a walk. It's all things that'll make you happier, healthier, and enjoy life more. You're awesome. I'm the Undead Viking. I will talk to you next time.